The IPL is worse this year. To make it a real league, it obviously had to expand, and 10 teams is a bare minimum. I would assume that the BCCI have a magic number in mind, but there's no reason why there can't be 20 teams in 10 or 15 years' time. That would make it the kind of league that they're always sort of pushing it towards being. It would allow them to bring in second teams in large markets, maybe even find some interesting smaller marketplaces. Maybe you could have a tourist team in Goa or Pondicherry. You know, have fun with it. It's very 1990s TV to only have like one game per night. I mean, we stream now, and if one game is shit, I want to be able to scroll, find something better to watch. Give me 3 or 4 games. Perhaps even all start them at slightly different times so the middle overs don't overlap. There's lots of different things that we can do. We started with a very good system, but we won't finish with that system.
This is the last note. My dad told me to say this.
And these are all the sort of options of a proper sporting league. But the IPL, like all the T20 leagues around the world, are still very early on. They're still building towards what they will ultimately become. And no one really knows what that will be. Because sports and how we consume sports and follow sports is moving so fast. But more teams is more games. And that will help in bigger deals. And that's the aim, right? To make as much money as possible. That's what the IPL is set up to do. So bringing in these extra 2 teams this year was obviously a very good step. But from a quality of cricket viewpoint, it's also a step backward. We had 88 players in our first 11s last season, and we have 110 now. That's a quite obvious jump back. Had we allowed for 5 or say 6 even overseas players, that might have changed a little bit. But we don't have that. And instead, it's still 4, and you can easily suggest that the league is around, I don't know, let's say 20% worse. So there are players in IPL teams right now that last year wouldn't have been in the team. Let's take Ajinkya Rahane, who was probably done as an IPL frontline player a year ago. He's never been perfectly suited to the IPL, but he's a career 31 average, 121 scorer. But in his prime, he had some higher average years with past strike rates that went with them. And of Indian players, he's probably one of the better players out there when it comes to pace bowling. And his brain is obviously a very good thing to have. I'd also include his slip fielding, although it's not quite as important in the IPL. But overall, he's still a fairly good package. But you look at last year and you're like, well, what team would actually need him in their lineup? Who would he have improved? It would have been quite hard to find any team that Ajinkya Rahane would have made better. And that's why he played 2 games last season. And the year before it was 9. And he averaged 14 while striking at 104. So far this year, he's already had 1 really good innings where he helped his team chase Chennai's subpar 133 with a 44 not out and basically got them over the hump in that game. But at his age and ability, he should be a bench player now. But he's been bumped up from the bench because a lot of players have. In that same game is Shivam Dube, who had the same kind of match that he is known for, the one that gets him abused on social media. He failed with the bat, and his 1 over got completely smashed. But as of the games on the 3rd of April, Dube was one of 3 players in the whole IPL with more than 100 runs. And he went within a run of scoring back-to-back 50s. Would you like to guess when Shivam Dube had ever scored back-to-back 40-plus scores in his career before that? It's never. This is actually the second time he's ever made back-to-back 30-plus scores in his entire T20 career. I mean, Dube is 28, and he's played 65 innings, mostly batting between 3 and 7. You would assume that he would have done this at least a few more times. Now, it is possible that it's not just that it's a weaker league that's allowed this, but also he's coming of age. He's 28. He should be in his prime years. And you only have to watch him to know that over his entire career, he's certainly underperformed. But it's still interesting that as the league has expanded, he's had his first mini breakout. Although not with the ball. He's bowled 2 overs for 36 runs so far. Let's look at a bowler as well. Umesh Yadav has not had a great IPL career. He has shown in fits and bursts that he can take wickets, but he's only had 3 years of a sub-8 economy, with 4 years where he's been at over 9s. He just goes for runs. And as a strike bowler, he hasn't necessarily struck as much as you would like him to strike. There's a lack of strike. Struck out, if you know what I mean. Because of that, he only played 2 matches last season. He was also overlooked for the first round of the auction this year. He eventually went for 2 crore in the second round, which for an Indian test seamer is kind of low. And you would have assumed that normally, if he was hired for that, he'd probably go in and have a bench role. Come out when the wickets particularly suit his type of bowling, or if there's an injury, or if the team is struggling, you bring an experienced player back in. But Shreyas McCullum have sent him right up the front to attack. In fact, they've actually told him, just go out there and get wickets. Don't worry about runs at all. Attack and attack. That seems like a really clear way of using his skills. But I find it doubtful that no one's ever told him that before. But this year, it's really working. Umesh currently has 8 wickets in 3 games. That is the same amount he took in 2019, 2020 and 2021 combined. Now you will assume there will be some pretty harsh regression to the mean at one point for him. His current economy is 4.92. He must be feeling faint even thinking about that. And his bowling average is 7.4. But again, you have the signs that some of the players who were on the scrap heap before are now bouncing, are now automatic starters. There's even been some weird trends in this new season. Like Rahul Tewatia is playing almost exclusively as a batter at the moment. He's only delivered 12 balls in his first 2 matches. Or my personal favourite, Deepak Hooda, who has 119 runs from only 3 knocks. This is his 8th year in the IPL. And after 3 games, he's only 41 runs away from his best ever year with the bat. And there's a reason I picked kind of all these players that I've mentioned today. They've all been written off as shit IPL players over the years. Rahane is a test specialist who clogs up a spot while constantly looking out of place. Umesh Yadav is actually one of the least appreciated test bowlers who's done really well. And he's also given plenty of reasons to his haters of why he can't be trusted in the IPL. Shivam Dube was talked up as the next Hardik Pandya, which is probably a little bit unfair on him. But in all truth, other than the aesthetically pleasing movements he makes when he bats, he's rarely looked at a player who's been worthy of batting or bowling in the IPL. Deepak Hooda just got really great money on the back of a long career record, averaging 16 with the bat with a strike rate of 129 and a bowling average of 50 and going at over 8 and over. And Rahul Tewatia played 1 great innings and since then seems to have disappointed everyone who can remember that 1 great innings. But while these players get a lot of flack, none of these players are actually that bad. They're all obviously better than replacement level players. You've got to remember that the level of the IPL was so insanely high. India is where the most talent in the world currently resides when it comes to cricket. Then you throw 4 overseas players into that, and the main overseas players, right? There's almost no one outside the Pakistanis who aren't in the IPL playing for it. The level of cricket is so high, especially when you only have 8 teams. So very good players looked a lot worse than they probably were. Dube, Tewatia, Hooda have all played for India. And Rahane is probably still one of the best players of pace in India. And for all the love of the new crop of pacers coming through and the excitement, Umesh was once someone who's very well loved. And he's still quite clearly decently quick and can move the ball around. Now with all that said, this season is still early on, and 2 Shivam Dube innings does not tell the complete story. Hooda might still end up with less than 150 runs on the year, and Tewatia is actually going to have to bowl at some point going forward in the year. But just from a mass perspective, this league should be weaker now, and the players that usually get abused on social media and get the most flack might actually have some surprisingly good years because of that.